A broken sea. It was a very dark and humid night. The neighbors had their chairs outside, hoping to be cooled by the breeze outside. Little Jemima was tugging at her dad and crying for his attention. Her dad was on the phone talking to a driver who had delayed in payment of that day's delivery. "You have closed and the bike is still with you at this time? It's all right, just bring my money tonight," he yelled at the other person on the phone. "There are other people willing to work. If you fail to make the payment tonight, forget that you will ride my bike for business again," he retorted and ended the call. "Bring my dinner outside here," he called at his wife. Life in the country had been a bit tough for everyone. Business had slowed since the new government took over power. Their policies seemed to be driving foreign businesses outside the country, and many of the young people have not much to do to make ends meet. "Why will you not watch where you are going to?" Amina retorted at the boy who had just ran into her as she returned from her kiosk out in the main market. "You have poured my food into the sand," she retorted. "I will have to report you to your mother's," he continued. "Please, Auntie Amina, do not tell my mom. It's just a mistake. I will be more careful next time," the young boy pleaded. "Run along home and do not let me see you on the street tonight," she demanded. "Yes, I will go straight home," the boy added. The 25-years-old Amina had completed her tertiary education, but the economic environment in the country had made it difficult for her to find a job. She had decided to begin petty trading, where she sells provision in the open market after renting a small kiosk. She also makes hair for ladies who can afford to look beautiful at these times. She had not been able to get customers in the past few months, though, and the shop is also not encouraging, as buyers rarely come to buy from her. Amina's phone rang as she got home, and it was Michiel. He had been childhood friend with Amina and had shared something quite important in the past 2 months. "Hello, Amina," he said. "I thought you were already asleep since you left the market early." He asked. "Michael, I am just getting to my house and I will be going to bed hungry. No thanks to that naughty boy who ran into me and threw my dinner away," she answered. "Oh, I am so sorry," said Michael. "Maybe you should consider what I have been telling you all this while," he continued. "Your life will change once you get to Europe, and you would find a job, then you will make money," he concluded. "You know I am not opposed to traveling overseas," Amina answered, "but the solution you are providing is risky," she continued. "Yes, however many had gone and succeeded, he urged her, plus the amount of money I will have to pay the people that will take me on the trip." Amina cuts in. "I have promised to pay half the fare, and when you are settled, you will pay me back," Michiel encouraged. "Okay, give me a few more time to think about it," she answered. Michiel had been suggesting to Amina to go to Europe through the Mediterranean Sea. Owing to the low economy of their country, a number of young men and women attempt to cross into Europe using the route. The many smugglers who carry the people on their rickety boat charge exorbitant amount from the desperate travelers. The news had been that not many had succeeded in the attempt, and the few who do have to deal with the stringent immigration policies coming up in most European countries. Amina Khorifa had always believed her life would be simple. She pictured herself running her a shop, marrying someone from her village, raising children who would grow up chasing crabs along the shoreline. Her West African town of Gabeju, though small, had its charms. Colorful markets, laughing neighbors, and sunsets that painted the ocean in gold. But peace can be fragile. When the government changed hands, fear crept in like a slow-moving tide. Military trucks began appearing on the streets in a bid to cow opposition and anyone who was in their support. People whispered instead of speaking. Friends vanished overnight, leaving empty homes and questions no one dared to ask. Amina kept her head down, but the world refused to let her stay invisible. One day, soldiers stormed the market after rumors of a protest. They beat those who resisted, arrested those who stood nearby, and fired warning shots that scattered the crowd like frightened birds. A bullet tore through the awning above Amina's stall, close enough for her to feel its heat. Her legs shook. The message was clear. She could stay, and lose everything, or she could leave and risk everything. It is time to consider the dangerous idea which Michael had sowed to her over the past months. She chose to leave. Samu came to the junction where Amina had arranged to meet him that evening. She had decided to leave without informing anyone, because she wanted to bear the risk and fear alone, but would share the joy of her success in the course of time with her family afterwards. "We live at dawn. Your money has been fully paid," Samu said in his rough voice, perhaps as a result of his numerous transactions with several other desperate travelers. "Okay," she replied, "but we have to leave now so we can get to the sea before dawn," Samu added. They traveled that night with a group of other desperate Europe-bound individuals: a quiet mother with 2 children, a former teacher, a young man named Sefu, who carried nothing but a small Quran wrapped in cloth. They shared food, fears, and hurried footsteps. "Europe will be better," Sefu kept saying, almost like a prayer. Amina wasn't sure she believed him, but hope, even borrowed hope, kept her moving. By the time they reached the coastal smuggling hub, Amina had learned that desperation has its own economy. Men with faces hidden behind scarves shouted schedules at them. Children carried jugs of water to sell. Women with weary eyes huddled close together, clutching their belongings. And then she saw it, the boat, if you could even call it that. Weathered, overcrowded, barely held together by rope and rust. But people were boarding anyway, driven by the same fire that burned inside her, the desire to live freely, to breathe without fear. Amina stepped onto the boat with trembling hands. The Mediterranean was not blue as the night gave way to dawn. It was black, endless, and merciless. The boat rocked violently in the waves, sending panic rippling through the passengers. Amina sat squeezed between the mother and Sefu. She held the smallest child in her lap, whispering lullabies her own mother once sang. "Do you think we'll make it?" Sefu asked quietly. Amina stared at the horizon, where sky and sea became one dark, indistinguishable mass. "We have to," she said. It wasn't an answer, it was a vow. Hours turned into days. People grew weak. Some prayed loudly, others prayed silently with trembling hands. Amina tried not to think about the stories she'd heard, the boats that never made it, the names lost beneath the waves. She encountered seasickness on their second day on the sea and could hardly bear the pain in her head. The woman gave her some fluid from her bottle, a concoction which relieves aches and nausea. Just about then, 2 men began to quarrel and were spoiling for a fight in the middle of the ocean. They were quarreling over the small space between hem, as they both desire a little comfort on the boat. There was no comfort at all in that moment for anyone on that boat. But just when despair began to swallow her, a bright light appeared in the distance, a rescue ship. Voices called out in a language she didn't understand, but felt in her bones. Amina had been found. They were saved. When she set foot on European soil, she collapsed to her knees and cried. Not out of fear this time, but relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. She had survived the sea, and she longed to call home and share her story. Now she had to survive the world beyond it. Amina was placed in a refugee center in southern Italy, a place filled with languages she couldn't speak, foods she didn't recognize, and faces that watched her with curiosity. It was overwhelming, but it was safe. She found it difficult to adjust at first. The culture variation had shocked her. It had been a staggering difference from that of her country, which she had known all her life. She attended language classes, worked odd jobs, and eventually secured a position washing dishes in a small bakery owned by an elderly couple. The owners, Marco and Sofia, treated her kindly. They taught her to knead dough, frost cakes, and shape delicate pastries. "You have a gentle touch," Sofia said one morning as Amina braided a loaf of challah. Amina smiled. "My mother always said, 'Hands learn what the heart remembers.'" She referred to her short time spent at a bakery back home shortly after her higher education. Every day, she grew a little more confident, a little more herself, and that was when she met him. Luca Ricci always comes to this diner to tuck some bread and coffee on his way from work. He walked into the bakery on a rainy Tuesday, shaking water from his dark curls and leaving a trail of droplets on the floor. He was a carpenter, tall, strong, and handsome in an effortless way, but what struck Amina first wasn't his appearance, it was his voice, warm, deep, and gentle. He ordered a cinnamon roll and black coffee, smiling as he thanked her in slow, clear Italian so she could understand. From then on, he stopped by. At first, they exchanged only greetings. Then greetings became small conversations became laughter, and laughter became something neither of them had expected. One day, when the bakery was nearly empty, Amina found herself telling him about the ocean, about the fear she'd left behind, about the dreams she wasn't sure she was allowed to have anymore. Luca listened, really listened. No pity, no judgment, just warmth. "I'm glad you made it here," he said softly. "The world would be less bright without you." Her cheeks flushed. For the first time since leaving home, she felt seen. Not as a refugee, not as a survivor, but as Amina. Their connection deepened effortlessly. He took her to open-air markets, pointing out his favorite foods. She showed him how to tie intricate African hair wraps. He built her a wooden jewelry box, carved with waves and stars. She baked him sweet puff-puff balls, reminding him that joy could be shared in small, sugary bites. One evening, they walked by the seaside, calm and shimmering under the moon. The same sea that had once nearly claimed her was now a witness to something new. "Luca," she whispered, her heart trembling. "I'm afraid. I don't want my past to scare you away." He took her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. "Your past made you strong," he said, "and your future. I hope you'll let me be a part of it." A single tear slipped down her cheek, not of sadness, but of healing. Under the moonlight, he kissed her gently, reverently, as if she were something precious. And she let herself believe, finally, that love could bloom even in the soil of sorrow. Marco and Sofia had been planning their retirement as they were both old, and since they had no child, they were contemplating on asking Amina to buy their bakery. They planned to share this with her on a beautiful Sunday evening. Luca was visiting, and Amina took an apple from the table and took a knife and cut it in half and gave a part to Luca. Not long after he took a bite, there was trouble. Luca was coughing and vomiting as he was sweating. Everyone was thrown into a huge panic. While Marco called an ambulance, Amina was pouring water on him and pulling and calling his name at the same time. Luca passed out just as the ambulance arrived. They took him to the hospital and began. Luckily, he was still alive. They ran several tests on him and concluded that he was poisoned. They called the police and asked that they investigate the incident since it happened in a public place. Marco and Sofia were asked to leave the police station, but Amina was kept back since what Luca ate was given to him by her. "I ate the other half of the apple too, and nothing happened to me," she pleaded. "How could I plan to kill a man I love so much?" she queried in tearfully. On the third day, Luca was discharged and he ran to the police station. At this time, a small trial had been held, and it was judged that Amina would be sent back to her country. Luca ran in to whisper to her lawyer with a document in hand. Marco and Sofia had done their investigation and found out that the knife she used in cutting the apple had been initially used to slice open one of the chemicals used in cleaning some of the kitchen equipment. While not a poisonous chemical, Luca was allergic to it, and hence the reaction. Amina regained her freedom. Years later, Amina stood outside the bakery, now partly hers thanks to Marco and Sofia's retirement, and watched the sunlight spill over the cobblestone streets. Inside, Luca was helping arrange pastries. She wore a simple gold ring. There was laughter in the air. Warmth, safety, love. She had crossed a dangerous sea, fled a life of fear, and carved out a new home in a place where she was valued and cherished. Amina had once feared the future. Now she embraced it with open arms.